If 22 grams of sodium chloride are mixed with 21 grams of sulfuric acid, what is the limiting reagent in the reaction, and what is the theoretical yield of our product, sodium sulfate? So this is a limiting reactant problem. They're clearly asking for the limiting reactant. We also know it's a limiting reactant because we're given masses of both of our reactants here. The amount of product formed, whether it's sodium sulfate or hydrochloric acid, is going to depend on the amount of the limiting reactant. So we have to first determine that. We're going to need the molar masses, so to save some time, let's just write the molar masses of our two reactants here. Sodium chloride has a molar mass of 55.44 grams per mole, and our sulfuric acid has a molar mass of 98.09 grams per mole. We'll deal with sodium sulfate later. So our limiting reactant problem, we're going to pick one of our two reactants, assume it's a limiting reactant, and see if we have enough mass of the other chemical for it to be the limiting reactant. So in this case, we are going to make our assumption. We're going to assume, this is our premise, assume that, and I'm just picking sodium chloride because it's the first reagent, sodium chloride is the limiting reactant. Okay, so then the question is, do we have enough sulfuric acid, H2SO4, the other reagent, to react with all of our sodium chloride? So our question is going to require us to calculate how many grams of sulfuric acid do we need if sodium chloride is our limiting reactant. That would be all 22 grams of our sodium chloride reacting. So let me rewrite the equation down here so we can draw our roadmap. We have 2 moles of sodium chloride. I'm going to skip the subscripts, plus H2SO4, and that's going to give us our sodium sulfate, and our other product is going to be 2HCl. So we are given in the problem 22.0 grams of sodium chloride. So let's write that, 22.0 grams of sodium chloride. The question is, how many grams of sulfuric acid do we need to react with all of that? Let's rewrite the molar masses down here. So we've got 58.44, and we've got 98.09. I'm going to skip the units there. We know they're grams per mole. So our roadmap, molar highway, we're going to convert our 22 grams sodium chloride to moles. Sodium chloride, then we're going to convert that to moles of sulfuric acid. And we're going to convert that to grams of sulfuric acid. So let's set that up, get started here. Starting with 22.0 grams, and we're going to multiply that by the molar mass, which is 58.44. We're going to have 1 mole upstairs and 58.44 grams downstairs. Grams cancel, I'm left with moles of NaCl. Let's put that there. We now want to convert moles of NaCl to moles of sulfuric acid. We see we have 2 moles of sodium chloride giving us 1 mole of sulfuric acid. So we're going to multiply by 1 mole H2SO4 over 2 moles sodium chloride. Moles of sodium chloride cancel. I now have moles of sulfuric acid. I want to convert that to grams, so I use the molar mass of sulfuric acid. So it's going to be 98.09 grams H2SO4 per 1 mole H2SO4. Moles of sulfuric acid cancel, so now we can do the calculation and get our grams of sulfuric acid needed. The math gives us 18.46 grams of sulfuric acid needed. So if we have that much, then our sodium chloride is the limiting reactant. If we don't have that much, then sulfuric acid is a limiting reactant. Let's go up and compare. In the problem, we were told that we have 21 grams of sulfuric acid. So let's bring that information down here. We have 21.0 grams H2SO4. We need 18.46. Well, we got more than enough. We have plenty of sulfuric acid, therefore our premise was correct, and our limiting reactant is, in fact, sodium chloride. So now that we determined sodium chloride to be the limiting reactant, that chemical, that reactant specifically, let's highlight it now, is going to determine how much of our products, and in this problem we're asking specifically for mass sodium sulfate, it's going to determine how much of our product has formed. So now we're going to have to do another stoichiometric calculation to determine the mass of product that we're going to get. So let's rewrite the equation again. So let's draw a line here. So now in part B, the question is going to be how many grams of sodium sulfate will form. So again, our starting point is going to be our balanced chemical equation. We've got 2 moles sodium chloride plus 1 mole of sulfuric acid. Oops. Giving us sodium sulfate and 2 moles of HCl. So now we know that this is our limiting reactant. This is in excess. So if this is in excess, it is no longer applicable to solving the problem. We can ignore it. We're asked to calculate how many grams of sodium sulfate will form. So our starting point is going to be the mass of sodium chloride given in the problem, which was 22.0 grams. So that's our starting point. So we've got 22.0 grams of sodium chloride. How many grams of sodium sulfate? Our usual molar highway. We're going to convert our grams of sodium chloride to moles. Then we're going to convert moles of sodium chloride to moles of sodium sulfate. And then we're going to convert moles of sodium sulfate to grams of sodium sulfate. Since we're going to need the molar mass to convert moles of sodium sulfate to grams, we do need to look up or calculate the molar mass. And again, I'll just do that for you, 142.05 grams per mole. You can verify that number. So let's just set it up now and do the calculation. We're starting with our 22.0 grams sodium chloride times 1 mole. Contains 58.44 grams. This step, of course, is the same as the first step in our previous calculation, part A. Let's put the sodium chloride here so we're not confused. So that gives us moles of sodium chloride. Again, to convert to moles of sodium sulfate, we look at the coefficients in the balanced chemical equation. 2 moles of sodium chloride gives us 1 mole of sodium sulfate. So I'm going to have 1 mole sodium sulfate over 2 moles sodium chloride. Moles of sodium chloride cancel. And now I got moles of sodium sulfate. Now I'm going to convert to grams. I use the molar mass, 142.05 grams in 1 mole of Na2SO4. Moles of sodium sulfate cancel. So now we've got everything set up. We have grams in our numerator for our answer. Turn on the calculator, do the math, and we get a value of 26.7 grams of sodium sulfate.